Sean Salisbury here for Open Sports. Let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals transformation, or should we say emergence, because it's not a re-emergence because you can't re-something that you were never at. Well, unless you go back to when they were in St. Louis and they were a decent football team with Jim Hart and Mel Gray and Terry Metcalf those days. And they're getting physical now. As I got physical with my Razor, the Razor won, but guess what? The Arizona Cardinals are winning this battle, especially in the playoffs. And let's look at continuity, certain things you need to have, or some element of these to be successful. And the Arizona Cardinals have had coach after coach, and change after change, and coordinator after coordinator, and quarterback after quarterback. I mean, constant. Well, look at the Miami Dolphins, post Dan Marino and Don Shula. Quarterback after quarterback, general manager after general manager, head coach after head coach. Now look, Bill Parcells, Tony Sperano, and a consistent and solid Chad Pennington. And since Danny Marino and Don Shula, they haven't had this. Now look at them. They turn it around. Great organizations have some element of all those. You know, the New England Patriots, Belichick and Pioli, Bill Polian and Tony Dungy. I mean, everywhere you go. When Carmen Policy and Eddie DeBartolo was the owner and Bill Walsh, the continuity. Joe Montana. I mean, look around. It's not a mystery, folks. And then there's an attitude change. And that's the main thing about Arizona that I love, is the attitude change that a guy like Ken Whisenhunt, their head coach, and here's why they've emerged and become a team. Because Whisenhunt understands when he was in Pittsburgh, and he has a mentality that it's not going to be a soft finesse team. And you saw what they've done. And for the last 3 or 4 years when Denny Green was there, and Denny was my coach, and I know Denny just came at the wrong time, unfortunate circumstance, because Denny has what Ken Whisenhunt has. There's a toughness about Denny Green also, but it was unfortunate, and Denny Green could go fix another team, trust me. A team like the Oakland Raiders ought to consider a guy like Denny Green. But back to Ken Whisenhunt, is that he came along at the time when there was not going to be any more nonsense. He understood who the owner was, but he also, and who the front office, what was going on, but he did it his way. Now, you got to be able to move around and adjust to your players, but also get it comfortable where the players like adjusting to you. Ken Whisenhunt came from a tough Pittsburgh Steelers where he was coaching and coordinator and saw the toughness as it started to emerge with his quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, and the way they ran the football. And Russ Grimm, his offensive line coach, same way in Pittsburgh. And when Russ was in Washington, who was around Joe Gibbs and around that football organization when Bobby Beathard first started. I mean, it's not a secret, folks. It's not a secret. Then the biggest secret, you got to get players. And Arizona's got players now. But Ken Whisenhunt did not allow them to deviate the course. And that's why they're emerging and doing the things that they do and doing them so well. And there was a time in December we thought, same old Cardinals. Same old Arizona Cardinals where they get your butt kicked, they go on the road at home. They finally win the last regular season game of the year, and they get a little momentum. We're thinking one and done in the playoffs, see you later. Well, no, they've won 2 in a row against 2 teams that are supposed to be more physical, Atlanta and Carolina, and be able to handle Arizona. But no, and physicality is not only an attitude in the weight room, but an attitude on the football field. But what Ken Whisenhunt did, he didn't allow that ball to keep going downhill. He's not used to losing when he was in Pittsburgh, and he wasn't going to stand for it. And knowing Ken, like I know him, this is not one of those things where you say, okay, we're going to accept it. If you won't tolerate it, and the guys that don't want to be a part of it, he got rid of them, or he'll also set him on a bench. And I love Matt Leinart, but he didn't think Leinart was ready to play, and it wasn't the type of quarterback he felt necessary to get them where they wanted to go, that gave them the chance this year. Now, Matt's going to be the future there, you'd think, but he didn't think, and he made the gutsy decision to start Kurt Warner in August. And guess what? Kurt Warner has taken him Pro Bowl season, got him headed to the NFC Championship game, and Kurt's been to Super Bowl and been an MVP. So Ken Whisenhunt, it starts there with an attitude of not allowing crap and junk to seep in. And when it starts to seep in, you get rid of it. And the Arizona Cardinals now have got people with Adrian Wilson, who's a stud on defense. And you start to get people up front who want to pressure the passer. And then you start to get a quarterback. You get Kurt Warner, who's got the guts and toughness, and an offensive line that's getting tired of being pushed around. And this is a team that's still, now in the playoffs they've done it. Now imagine when they get this running game going back, and they get back to where it's actually a major threat. It's been somewhat of a threat in the playoffs, but it's an attitude, and that's why the Arizona Cardinals have emerged. Number 2 is I think that the 2 teams they played thought it was going to be a little easier. Now they could tell you whatever they want, but watching from their performance, I'm not sure they thought Arizona was going to present this kind of problem. But Arizona overcome Anquan Bolden out. Great teams win Super Bowls. Good teams, and Arizona has not proved to be great yet or a great organization yet because they've got to sustain it year after year. But they're on the right path. Is they find a way to get rid of it when things are going wrong. They find a way to stop it and to put their foot down and stop it. And Arizona did that. They didn't do it in December, but they're doing it in January, which is far greater than anytime you need to do it because they got into the playoffs and they're taking care of it. So if it's not the head coach taking care of it, it's making sure you empower your guys on the football team to do it too. That they take care of their business in-house. That they don't let too many things get out of hand. Good teams, and what I meant to say, great teams win Super Bowls. Good teams trying to be great overcome losses, overcome injuries. Anquan Bolden out, Larry Fitzgerald steps up and does what he always does. The Arizona Cardinals rely on somebody else. Good teams rely on the next guy to step in, and they don't have backups. They have what they call starters and other starters, and that's the way Arizona approaches it. But Ken Wisenhunt's attitude is the main reason, and what he's done and the people he's put around him on his staff. Clancy Pendergast, I say it every year, someday he's going to be a head coach. This guy, we've been talking about Arizona as the fashionable team for 4 years, 5 years. That this is the year they break out. Well, they finally broken out and got themselves in an NFC Championship game. And Russ Grimm and Clancy Pendergast and Ken Wisenhunt are a big part of it. Their defensive coordinator Clancy has put himself in position to where, he's not going to allow all the talk of Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Tennessee, but his team is finally starting to understand what he does. And it's been a huge upgrade this playoff time with the way he's got his team going. So that's where it comes. When you look at all the successful franchises in any sport, but it starts with an owner, then you get a general manager in there who understands, an owner who just stays out of it, signs paychecks, gets the right people, lets football people do football things, and then you get a Bill Parcells type, and then you get a Tony Sperano type, or you get a Ken Wisenhunt type. The Arizona Cardinals, now the key will be obviously winning this game and seeing if they can go on and win a Super Bowl, which would be as amazing a football story as we've seen in a lot of years. I'm talking about a lot of years. But what they've got to do now is, instead of looking ahead, that's what our job in the media is to do, is sustain it. But I think with Ken Wisenhunt in place, and with a nucleus of good young players, they've got, and some key veterans, they've got themselves headed in the right direction. This team, quarterback, good, head coach, really good, staff around him, really good, and an ownership who's finally started to back away and understand to get good players, you've got to pay for them, and then when they're there, you've got to keep continuity. And Arizona's finally starting to get some continuity. That's the emergence of the Arizona Cardinals. Do not count them out against the Philadelphia Eagles. Trust me on this, because they're on that roll, and it's amazing what a little confidence will do for a football team. But Ken Wisenhunt brought an attitude to Arizona that he's not going to stand for mediocrity, because every year Arizona's been about mediocrity over the last, 20 years, 25 years. It's no longer mediocrity, and there's no longer allowed to be mediocre football players playing mediocre games. And Ken Wisenhunt stopped the downhill roll in December, and he's got them on a let's go to Las Vegas type of roll right now, where everything they do is coming up aces for them. So this is going to be a fun game, but that's the emergence of the Arizona Cardinals. It's not a mystery. There's a reason why great players, the best players in football, the Jerry Rices, Walter Paytons, Michael Irvins, all those guys who are the best at what they do, when you go and watch them on the practice field, Peyton Manning, they work the hardest. They work the hardest. So it's no mystery. When you take the talented guys and put them with the guys who work the hardest, and they're a lot of times the same guy, you have yourself a championship caliber team, and that's where Arizona is. Sustaining it, getting themselves ready to play this week, and the big key for a veteran team or a young team to take a step back and look and say, okay, we've won 2 playoff games, but we're not there yet. Don't accept the fact that you've won 2 playoff games and get to the point where you say, okay, we made it to the NFC Championship game. It's been a successful season. It's not a successful season, in my opinion, until you win a championship. So they can't take that deep sigh and breath and say, we made it. And I've mentioned that before, and I think Ken Wisenhunt's the perfect guy not to allow them to do that. The Arizona Cardinals have emerged, no re-emergence because they weren't there, but they have emerged, and they've become a factor not only in the NFL now, but I think with the way that they've got things going, they're going to be a factor for the years to come, especially with the way we look at the NFC West. Congratulations to Arizona. This is an emerging team that's going to pose a huge threat for the Eagles, and if they get to the Super Bowl, for whichever team they play. Do not count the NFC out of this one just yet. I'm Sean Salisbury for Open Sports.
Think you can complete the drive? Play today and get an automatic entry to win daily prizes, 2 tickets to the big game, and a brand new car. Start your drive today at opensports.com.